Hi, folks. Welcome to the Fivetran Data Podcast. I'm Kelly Koleffel, your host. This week, we have a special episode. 3 marketing leaders discussing the current state of data in marketing. Moderated by Fivetran's VP of Product and Portfolio Marketing, Caitlin Arigitano. The panel includes Scott Brinker, the VP of the Platform Ecosystem at HubSpot, Denise Pearson, CMO at Snowflake, as well as Rachel Thornton, CMO at Fivetran. Their conversation touches on everything from what Customer 360 looks like in 2024 to the role of the modern data stack in enhancing customer personalization. They even touch on the future of leveraging advanced analytics and Gen AI in marketing. For the full show notes, visit us at fivetran.com/podcast. You can also send us any feedback or comments at podcast@fivetran.com.
So today we're going to be talking about how that modern data stack can power personalization in marketing. And I am joined by an elite group of folks today that we're going to talk about these different topics. So first of all, Scott Brinker, the VP of Platform Ecosystem at HubSpot, the man, the myth, the legend behind the MarTech architecture as well, which is one of my favorite fun facts about you, Scott. Denise Pearson, the CMO from Snowflake, and then as well, Rachel Thornton, the CMO from Fivetran. Welcome, everybody. It's a privilege to have so many big names and smart people on this call today. So thank you for taking the time to join us. I want to start with a question that might feel kind of deceptively easy. And that just is, the title of this, what we're talking about is personalization and Customer 360. So what is Customer 360 to each and every one of you? I'll give some time for everyone to answer. And I think especially leading the horse to water a little bit here, in 2024, this looks probably really different these days. So Scott, why don't we start with you? What do you think Customer 360 is and what are the things that kind of impact it in this day and age?
I can't help but start with, the old joke about Wanamakers. I know half my advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half. I feel like for a lot of companies, they've been in a mode where we have a customer 180. We're just not sure which half it is. What's been both really exciting, but also challenging for companies is there's just been an explosion of data sources that marketers now have access to. It's not just sort of the traditional marketing channels, but because so many companies have all these digital properties and these digital touch points with their customers, just this tremendous amount of first party behavioral data is flowing in. There's a lot of really exciting plays happening in ecosystem worlds here, where now we're seeing more and more second party and clean data room partnerships. And so marketers have an embarrassment of riches with all this data. But I think the challenge for them is when we talk about the Customer 360, it's no longer just those traditional touch points, particularly did they engage in this marketing campaign? Did they, get contacted by a particular salesperson? But how do we make sure that we're layering in all of these different digital touch point feedbacks that we have as well, too?
I love that. I think that's absolutely spot on. Denise, I'm curious, do you have a different definition, anything to add? What are you kind of seeing and what do you think Customer 360 is these days?
Yeah, we can look from a technology standpoint where it's really about getting all those different interactions and those data points into one place and ideally in real time as well. But from a business value standpoint, it's really all about getting to know the person, the customer as a person, and what are the specific individual needs and expectations, that customer has. And we all know, right? Again, marketing is about, relevance. The more relevant you are to the customer, the more likely you're going to win that customer and keep that customer. So, and also now looking ahead, Customer 360 is also really the foundation on your data maturation journey. And if you want to be able to take advantage of things like, AI and in the next space, Gen AI, you need to have a Customer 360 strategy and data strategy in place.
I love that. I think that one thing that stuck out to me was definitely the real time. I don't know that we've thought of Customer 360 as a real time metric in the past. I think it was something you'd go for, you'd have done, I have a map of it, but not in real time. So I think that's a more modern requirement for the Customer 360. And I think the other part that I found really interesting was the idea that Customer 360 is the foundation, not the goal anymore. And I think that's also, it's something, Rachel, I'd love to have your take on this. We've been talking about is in order to get into things like AI, you do need to have everything ready, if you will, right? There's a lot of actual foundation and prep work to be able to do these things. And I think it's interesting to talk about Customer 360 as now the foundation rather than like the endpoint. So Risha, I'm curious, what are you seeing when it comes to Customer 360? Anything you want to add on there?
I do think that it is a lot of great technology now that makes, I think, the Customer 360 concept more relevant and also more possible than it's been. I am excited at this point to be a marketer because I actually think there's so many great tools out there. So depending on campaign tools, chat tools, sales tools, biz dev tools, but all of those things coming together and being able to bring the insights that you get in your customer across all of those different touch points, but bring them in, be able to do the analysis on them, be able to uncover insights, but then have that feed the next set of customer interactions and the next set of experiences you build is super powerful. I think the real-time thing is critical. There's so many customers, I'm sure that Scott, Denise, we all see that are like, hey, I'm not just doing chatbots, I'm doing SMS with my customers, I'm doing WhatsApp with my customers. So every time I have that kind of interaction with them, it feeds back into, hey, what do I want to know as this customer asks me, especially in direct to consumer environments. If this customer asks for something, hey, what have they bought before? What size have they bought, for example? What do I want to then tell them if they're looking for something? Hey, we have this for you, or based on your recent history, this is what we can give you. So I actually do think real time becomes not only more important, but way more achievable at this point.
By the way, I would just add on to that too, since we've got a panel of like two illustrious CMOs and someone who's pretty much a MarTech nerd. One of the things that's just really exciting about these architectures with the modern data stacks is they aren't just about unifying marketing touch points with the customers, but it really is about getting this data infrastructure that is spanning the entire company. So that, again, whether it's product interactions or sales interactions or customer service interactions, having that data in one place is opening up for marketers just such a much richer corpus of things that they're in a position to either learn from on an analytical basis or be able to action on from a trigger basis. So a very wide 360 view.
Yeah. No, very important point, Scott, right? I mean, in the retail world, for instance, demand forecasting is one of the big challenges, right? You want to be able to make sure you kind of stock up to the right amount, right, to meet demand. And if you stock up too much, right, that's a cost. If you don't have enough, they're going to impact your revenue. So Customer 360 is really the foundation for demand forecasting. So that's something your finance department is going to use as well. So every industry is going to have many different applications. This feeds into supply chain, management, as well. So it comes back to, we're going to see so much integration between 360 platforms and then all these other tools you're using for supply chain and ERPs and demand forecasting.
And I think, Scott and Denise, you also brought up as well, like, it's even within your own company, though. This data shouldn't just be marketing. It's also all of your CSMs, all of the folks that interact with customers. And so when we talk about building or having a data stack that can take in all of those diverse sources and give you any type of intelligence, that's going to be a pretty big ask for a data stack these days. Something that wasn't, I don't think, asked of data stacks 5 years ago, even, that kind of power. So I appreciate that. I think those are some interesting insights into what Customer 360 is looking like, especially at some really big companies.
This is not just something marketing can own in its silo as well. Again, right, this needs to be a governed, centralized strategy for the entire company. Your Customer 360 platform is truly, it's the beating heart of the customer-centric enterprise. So it's something that everyone will interact with. And in the past, I think we've talked a lot about this as, again, a marketing platform. But it's, again, I think we're all in agreement. This is really critical for the entire enterprise.
Yeah. I think it's nice, actually, that marketing and these other teams can come together and do it. I feel like over the years, marketing hasn't necessarily always been involved in platform decisions or larger infrastructure decisions. And I do think that data literacy and marketing now go hand in hand. So you can sit down with your CIO, with your CDAO and say, okay, look, if this is the platform we want to build, here's what we're needing from a marketing perspective, or here's what we would like to see the outcomes be from a marketing perspective. I know that from just an infrastructure perspective, I know that Snowflake and HubSpot both do such a great job at let's educate our customers so that they know when they sit down, this is what I want my cloud data warehouse to be. These are my choices for that, or these are my choices for my CRM, and this is why I would choose this option. So it's exciting to see how marketers have become more data literate over the years and much more of a driving force in those data, in those infrastructure conversations.
Absolutely. I also love the idea that Customer 360 has gone from being like a stagnant dashboard to like the living, breathing heartbeat of the company. And I think that's really inspiring. What do you all think about the kind of shifts to personalization, or even some are calling it hyper-personalization nowadays, and how data plays into that and how marketers need to think about this?
I love the fact that we're now adding like hyper to everything. It's hyper agile marketing. I understand why. It feels like just the pace and the granularity of what's happening here. It's incredibly exciting, but also quite mind boggling. I think what's exciting about the hyper personalization here is it's through both direct digital channels, right? Our ability to personalize particular landing pages when someone's responding to a campaign on this. It's how we're plugging content in, whether it's, from a campaign based, even the process of like determining segments. We used to have these very large buckets of segments. We are increasingly, if not truly a segmentation of one, being able to really get to these micro segmentations. I can think of an example in like the HubSpot ecosystem where we now identify when a customer is a customer of HubSpot and a customer of one of our partners, but they haven't integrated the two. We can do like a hyper-targeted campaign to help them get those two systems connected. This is really exciting once you have the mechanisms to be able to automate that kind of hyper-personalization. But it's all predicated on the assumption that you can actually get the data for making those decisions to the right place at the right time.
That's a great point. Denise, I'm curious, what about you? What are your thoughts on the possibility of, I like Scott, yes, hyper-personalization is the new personalization. How does data fit into that? And how do you and your team think about and balance making sure that your data is secure and governed and you're thinking through all of the GDPR and CCPA, but also providing that experience?
Yeah, governance and data privacy, there's nothing more important than that. And if we look at sort of the trends in data at the moment and all the new applications being developed, a lot of those new applications are really around data privacy and helping organizations with that. This also comes back to the trust you have with your consumers. Again, the trust is, of course, the foundation to the relationship you have. And customers, if they know that they're going to get a very good customer experience through data, they will accept certain things. It often comes back to where the data resides and where it's moving. Right? What have you opted in for? What haven't you? So that's more about then what is organization doing with your data? Are they giving this data to another organization? Are they sharing that data with someone that shouldn't really have that data? So those are really the core things to think about.
Yeah, I'll be honest, this cardigan that I got was an Instagram targeted ad. And whoever has my personalization, they are hyper personalized. It is very interesting to see that when people really pull it off and I get it, it's exciting to get introduced to a new brand or a new company you've never heard of. And I think we've all had that experience of, as a consumer, hyper personalization really being cool and exciting. But we've also had it the other hand where we're like, what do you think? I would be interested in that. And I think that can often be the line between really great marketing and people who still need to do some improvement maybe on personalization.
Get that personalized experience from a brand you trust and you have a relationship with. You don't question it, right? You question it when you suddenly get an ad for something that how could they know that, right? That's when you get concerned. But again, think also about the time we spend maybe scrolling through or searching for something. And then that be able to be served something that fits your personal expectations. It's pretty outstanding. We have a customer, which is one of the largest fashion retailers on the planet. They have mastered customer 360. They're very much beyond customer 360 in terms of and hyper personalization and forecasting, all that. And they can forecast and predict exactly what shoe you are going to like. And that makes the world of difference. When you go to the website, everything you see is going to be served up according to your needs.
Rachel, what are your thoughts on that?
The more ability we are to deliver very hyper-personalized experiences, the more tools we have to do it, the more data we have to do it, it makes the governed aspect of that data and the access aspect of that data even more important. And so it's a company who, when you're thinking about, I have all this data, there's great things I can build from it. There's good experiences I can deliver, but it matters deeply in terms of customer trust. Who uses it? How is that data made available? Who has access to it? How are you basically tagging it, labeling it, prepping it, delivering it to people, and the right people internally, so that you don't have situations where, hey, a customer was clear that they wanted this type of engagement with us, but not this one. However, we're really good with that tracking. And so now we've broken their trust. So I think I actually think it's amazing how far we've come with the concept of hyper-personalization. But it is true, if you do this wrong, if you execute it wrong, because you aren't good about you govern data, you regulated data, if you're being compliant, if you have audit capabilities, if you're being able to deliver the data to the right person to build those experiences, you end up quickly with a situation where the customer's like, no, actually, I didn't give you the ability to reach out to me that way. And so I think that what makes hyper-personalization work, in addition to the tools we have now on the platforms we have to do it, but there's a really strong concept of data governance, compliance, and audit capabilities, and then the ability to put it in the right hands of internal teams to build the right infrastructure from it or the right experiences from it. I think that is critical.
Absolutely. I think all of this conversation, right? I think both this topic and our previous one further highlights, I think, Rachel, you said it, that like marketers, I think there's a bridge that is being built and is being crossed on both sides. Marketers need to understand more about the infrastructure behind all of this, because the same information or the same data you're using to do this hyper personalization has all of these other ramifications and thoughtfulness that needs to go into it from your data team. And so if you don't know about all of this, then it's going to be more difficult for you to move faster and succeed. And with that in mind, we're actually going to talk a little bit more like, I don't know, brass tacks, I suppose, about that particular architecture. And Scott, I'm going to, in a minute, turn it over to you so you can walk us through some of that. And so, Scott, since you are in the middle of all of this, both as a customer of Snowflake and Fivetran, but in general, just in the middle of the MarTech landscape, I'm wondering if you could walk us through how HubSpot does this. Like, how do you think about this? What does this look like for you?
At HubSpot, like any enterprise company, we have a huge number of different data sources for our business, back office and front office, product usage data, ERP like Anaplan, HR analytics from Workday, Greenhouse, survey data from SurveyMonkey, data in Google Drive and Google Sheets, marketing data from, well, our own use of HubSpot, just a tremendous number of sources and constantly new ones coming online. I think that's one of the key things you were mentioning about the evolving MarTech landscape. If there is one thing that has been constant in marketing and technology, it really has been change. Every year, we keep finding these new emerging applications or new emerging channels that we wanted to have the ability to experiment with. But it's very important that our architecture be designed in a way that it can allow us to plug those emerging and experimental technologies into our stack without it having to be a huge engineering task. And so then being able to get all that data into Snowflake, which is what we use as our own cloud data warehouse, we're then able to leverage that data in a variety of destinations, everything from Looker for analytics to custom Python and R programs, ML and AI apps. And as the data engineering team that worked on this has advocated multiple times before adopting Fivetran, this was an incredibly manual process for them. They had to extract and load these, sort of each app had its own characteristics, trying to manually get the proper modeling for that inside our warehouse. And so for them, Fivetran like greatly accelerated and automated this process for them. They particularly loved the dbt integration to expedite data transformation and modeling. And I'm not giving due credit to all the wonderful work that they did with you, but I know they did publish an in-depth article on the Fivetran blog about how they got this all set up. And so, yeah, those of you who are a little bit more data engineering savvy would definitely recommend looking that up.
Thanks. That's great, Scott. I'm curious, as you've gotten more into this space and more into the data ecosystem, what's been the most kind of like interesting thing you've understood about the modern data stack you now see unlocked through the modern data stack that maybe you didn't know before?
Well, I think the big shift is for a long time, right, the data that came into the warehouse was largely used for things like analytics, or if we were applying them towards things like segmentation or development of new models for how we might do go to market, it was very much a batch oriented type process. And because of the performance increases, that we now see at the cloud data layer here, over these past couple of years, there's been this just renaissance of people recognizing that there's all these opportunities now to also be able to leverage this data in more direct operational feedback loops. So feeding it back into our frontline applications, potentially in real time, but even if it's, like pseudo real time, it's tremendously powerful to not be in mode of like, oh, well, we analyzed last month's data and this is what we recommend you do next month, to be in a mode where there start to become these cycles that like, okay, as things are happening inside our organization and that data becomes visible in our shared data layer, we then have the ability to action on that quite rapidly. And I think for a lot of companies, this is very early, like just beginning to understand the potential of this. But I feel for marketers, this is an absolute playground of like new ways to think programmatically about how we engage with our prospect and customers. I don't know, you can tell I'm pretty excited about what this is opening up for people.
Customer 360 has been talked about as a goal for a very long time. So I'm curious, especially from our CMOs, is it overhyped? Is it possible? Is it impossible? Do you really think that this is something that marketers just make to market to each other? Or does it have some legs here? So Denise, I'd love to start with you first. What is your take on this?
Well, it's definitely not overhyped. And as we talked about here, it's really the foundation of your data strategy that is going to enable you to take advantage of things like generative AI and AI, moving forward. We talked a lot around just, predicting behavior and personalization, but think about also marketing and taking advantage of generative AI, things like being able to create campaign design. Like think about how often we're trying to find a good image for a campaign. Think about when that image is automatically generated to fit expectations of the person you're sending this campaign to, fully automated. Think about when the content is created, automatically. That email you're trying to that you spend time writing on, when that is fully generated automatically for that individual customer. That's going to save us so much time, on the marketing side. The foundation for that is, again, that 360 data platform. You can't have an AI strategy without the data strategy. I think the biggest challenge at the moment, it's not technology, it's really the know-how and the education and data literacy, which, Rachel talked about before as well. When I talk to other marketers and customers, right, they're not concerned about that the technology isn't there. They feel like we don't have the capability on our team to take advantage of this. The way to solve that, of course, is that technology is going to be easier to use, right? So that's going to solve the issue, but we still might not be fully there when it comes to everything. So having more data experience on the marketing team. What we're seeing for those companies that are really successful, they have data scientists on the marketing team. We have data scientists on the marketing team here at Snowflake. And often, right, data scientists have sit centralized somewhere on an IT or a data team, and they're trying to figure out what is it really that the marketing team is trying to solve here. They don't really understand the business problem. They do something great, but it didn't exactly solve the problem. So bringing really the know-how, the technical data scientist expertise to where the business challenge opportunities, that's going to be really key. So I think we're going to see more marketing teams, have the data scientists on their teams.
Rachel, what about you? What do you think Customer 360? Is it possible? Overhyped? What's your take?
Definitely not overhyped. I agree with Denise. It is something we can do now. I think that it is the foundation of any company that considers himself customer obsessed or customer first. I think when you have built out your data foundation and your data strategy, then being able to apply it to how you make your business, how you increase new business, customer retention, reduce customer churn, like all of those things. Once you have developed your Customer 360 strategy, all those things become infinitely easier. I do think one of the interesting challenges, obviously on the data literacy side, making sure that marketing teams have the data analysts with them or a way to work with them closely so they can unlock insights, derive not only the data literacy, but the other thing we talked about was data governance. Like that, I think data governance, making sure that you can only build the right experiences if you understand the data you have, if your data is ready and it's useful across teams. And so you have to make sure you have the right security, governance, compliance foundation. I just think that's critical to this.
Absolutely. I think this is going to be a big year for marketing and for data. And I think we're kicking it off with this big group of folks. I really appreciate it.